Welcome to the second edition, ladies and gentlemen, to the Journey for Greatness podcast with Eric D'Addario and
Tom Pizzo. Diddy. Oh man, that was a legendary intro. We're excited. Episode 2. We got a lot on our minds, Diddy. I think we've been chatting a little bit about the topic of today's podcast, and it's no other than just plain old getting started. We know how hard it is to just get something in motion, and we figured,
sorry to interrupt, but I mean, hey, when we started, when we were thinking about doing this, I know, right? It took us a while. We just kept talking about it. Hey, we should do it. We should start a podcast, Tom. We should do it. We had talked about it, and we never started, right?
Never, ever started. So that was probably, Diddy, I think that was like 2 years ago, honestly. I think it was 2.5 years ago. It was an idea. We thought, because we both, I don't know when you started listening to kind of podcasts like Eric Thomas. I remember back even when we went to, what Canada trip did we go to? I think it was it Kashuka's wedding? It was one of the weddings up there, and we went to.
Was it?
I don't know, but
it had to have been then.
And that was a long time ago. That was like 2012. So that was maybe even longer ago that we even kind of had the idea, because we both were starting to listen to Eric Thomas.
Yeah, it was the How Bad Do You Want It video.
Exactly. And you actually, I think you turned me on to Eric Thomas, if I'm not mistaken. But so anyways, we both had that passion for, personal development, getting better, all that type of stuff. So we're like, why don't we just start our own podcast? So we talked about it. We had an idea. And then we just let it, go for a while and picked it back up a few months ago. And I love the topic of getting started, because it's kind of it's an overarching theme in my life of there's different dimensions, right? Like physical health, wealth, happiness, all this type of stuff that you try to get better at. And it can become overwhelming just to get started in one little thing. So I think talking about our podcast, how we got started, will really help people kind of translate that into whatever area you want to attack, in your life to get better at.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that I can say when getting started with something that everybody probably has trouble getting started with is you get frightened, I mean, you think, how much time is this going to take? Am I going to make it? So you start getting all these negative thoughts in your head about what the outcome could be, what are people going to think about me, and then you just start thinking very negatively, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like, well, I don't know if I should do it, and you just start thinking and you're not doing, and then all of a sudden I feel like you don't take that action and you legitimately just forget about it. So I feel as though it's in people's nature to kind of be afraid once they start something new. Whether it's a new, sports team, whether it's starting a new job or something like that. I think that's a huge factor. And I think anything in life, too, is fear. Fear of starting something. Fear of, what are they going to think about me? Fear of, is it going to succeed?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Or, even like the people closest to us. I think we both ran into this, where when we started the podcast, I know, I think you even mentioned, I don't know, you got to tell me the story of, what your dad, because you said something about your dad said something about the successes of how to get better at podcasting, and people don't realize how much of a business podcasting is, even though all these big names that you hear about, the, Les Brown, the Frisella, Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, all these people have all these podcasts, right? And they're all at the top of the game. They're all at the top of the mountain. Well, I think the beauty of our podcast and where we're at is the fact that we may be at the bottom of the mountain, and taking people from the bottom to the top, I think is a fun thing. And talking about that, talking about how to get better at something and refining it and tweaking it, and then and not only that, but not beating yourself up for being perfect when you first start. I think that was a big thing of why we didn't start, was because we thought we had to have a website. We thought we had to have all this stuff, which, yeah, we're going to have down the road, but that shouldn't delay you. Like, oh, I need to have the best camera in order to go out and start, capturing like what you do, Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Camera videos. It's like, you don't need to buy an expensive camera. You can use your cell phone. So we just come up with excuses of why we can't do something instead of utilizing the tools that we have to just get going.
Yeah. And that's, it's not a bad thing. I mean, you want, as you said, the best camera. You want the best of the best. So you feel as though you got to take all this time to do everything to the best of your ability and to make it perfect. When in a sense, if you just start, I mean, what did I say today when we were talking? We're just going to start, we're going to do, and then as we go, we're making changes, What can we do better? We're going to assess as we go. And that was our biggest thing when we started, as you said. We're talking about, having the best sound quality, the best this, the best that. When, as we both agreed, we got over the biggest challenge, getting started. Now it's just the fact of, as we are going, making those changes on the fly, as a hockey coach would say. You know what I'm saying? So
I think we made the analogy. You and I are using like a wooden stick right now, and we got those old antique, hockey skates on. We're trying to play hockey against people that are great, but I think we laugh about it, we have fun, and at the end of the day, we know that we're just kind of speaking our truth, and that's the most important part.
Yeah, no, definitely, without a doubt. But I think another huge thing in getting started is people honestly think to themselves, honestly say, can I actually do this? So I think it's a little bit of also maybe some self-doubt. You know what I'm saying?
Lack of confidence, and I can relate to that.
Exactly, 100%. I 100%. That is huge too, to have the confidence to do it. And you have to realize, and I'm not just saying when doing a podcast, but just in general, you're gonna go through struggles. Stuff isn't gonna go your way. And I think people are in the fear of, stuff just maybe taking a bad turn or something, and, stuff maybe they're not used to going through adversity or something like that. But I think, confidence is huge. And I think that's a huge thing, that people aren't confident that they can succeed when they start. And so they say, well, is it actually worth it? Am I going to be able to go ahead?
And I was going to say, and the patience factor. I'm the most impatient person on the planet probably. And to have the patience to weather some of those struggles and to just sit back and say, okay, this didn't work out according to plan. Don't give up on it. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because there are some things that you may need to cut the leash on and just let go, in terms of ideas or, products, or, we could reassess in 4 months and say, hey, the podcast didn't work out, or, but I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, you need to be in love with the idea of doing something, but also know that it potentially could work out. So you have to continually come up with ideas. Just like ideas for the podcast, we have to continue to come up with ideas, or maybe people to come on the show, and keep a variety of things happening on the show so people are engaged and want to listen.
100% agree. I 100% agree with that. But another thing too with getting started is that it's really, I really feel as though people are concerned with how others are going to, I know I kind of touched on it, but how others are going to view them. And I'll come out and say that when I told my father, hey, me and Tom, we're going to start a podcast. First thing he says to me, Tom, I don't know if I told you this. Can you make money on that?
Yeah,
can you make money? Can you make money on that? And I'm saying this to lead up to something. And I was thinking to myself, I was saying to myself, that's the first thing you're going to ask me is about money. Because I think that is also, too, another thing that people think about when starting up is money. Okay, well, how much money is this going to make me right away? And you just talked about the process, long term. Well, it's not starting off. It can't be about the money. If you're in something for the money, and again, we'll touch upon this in another podcast about your why and stuff. But if it's about the money, then forget about it. Move on to something else, because it has to be a passion or something you love to do. I mean, I love popping on here with you for 25, 30 minutes and just talking. I love this. Like, I look forward to these days that we record these. I love them. So I think people think about, money. How much money am I going to make? Okay, few months, I should be making like this much. No, it's not about the money. You may not be making any money off it at first for a while. And then talking about money too, other people are expecting you to make money. And this goes back to the whole people viewing you. A perfect example right there. Are you going to make money off this? Is it going to produce money? How are you going to make money? And it's not to say in the future it won't. Right now it may not. Maybe for a few years it may not. But eventually maybe it will. And so then people think, oh, you've only made like this amount of money, or you haven't made any money, you're doing this for 5 years? Like, dude, give it up. Go get what people call a real job. And it's like...
So I want to ask you something. So, like, you're basically talking about people's measurement of success. Okay, X amount of dollars, which is fine. I'm not saying like you even touched about it today in your personal videos of like, wanting a dream car, wanting a house, wanting this, wanting that, material thing. Yeah. Absolutely nothing. I don't personally, you may have a different view. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with striving towards getting the car of your dreams if you're passionate about cars, if that's something that you are passionate about and you want that car. But just make sure it's tied to, underneath all that it's tied to something, more important, like what we talked about, like the why, like what you're doing it for. And so there's no wrong thing in saying, okay, maybe your passion is watches, maybe your passion is cars. You could have a multitude of different things that you're interested in. So I don't think it's just more so. I don't know exactly where I was going with that thought, but maybe you can help me out. I was just trying to get to a
I think
it's okay to want some of those things if those are your passions as well. But I think you were talking about like a higher overarching like dream, and that could be like go for it, because I think that was exactly where you were going with that.
A lot of people are thinking, and again, if you want to if your dream is to save money up and buy like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, or if you want to buy like a $5 million house, if that's what you're striving for, and that's what keeps that fire burning inside, if you can somehow find that and keep that burning inside, and it strives you to do what you do, then hey, keep doing it, my man or my girl, my lady, all right?
But I think too many times you do have where if you just start out, like I go back to the job I just had, it was like, I'm not making $1 million, I'm not making $100,000, I was making X amount, but it did pay the bills, and it did pay enough to have a general standard of living compared to what I was doing with racing. But I realized that manifested itself in other ways. When you're not doing something that you do enjoy or you aren't passionate about, you have to be practical. Yes, you have to pay the bills. Yeah, you have to look out for your future, 75-year-old self where you're going to retire someday. But there's that fine line of doing something that gets you up every day and makes you want to get out of bed. And I can relate to the people out there that are maybe in the position where they are not in a job that gets them out of bed, or, you want to hit the snooze button 28 times. And I'm still finding that. So I can relate to everybody in that situation. And so, I just look at it as a double-edged sword. You have to be practical. You have to provide a living, but don't sacrifice, not doing something passionate just to make the money. And I think that might be what you were talking about.
It was. So I talked about in my video the love of your grind. So what that means is if you're waking up and if you're waking up just to go to work, if you're waking up and you're just like, all right, shit, I got to go to work. Damn it. Like, I got to be in work in 45 minutes. So you're going to be in work at 8. You wake up at 7:15 and, you're going through your routine job and okay, boom, home, watch a little TV, go to bed. No, like, you got to love what you do, so then you love the process, I feel, and then, you know, you're going to be great at what you do, and then you can love the life you live. So what I mean by that is that, like, you know, you can get that stuff that you want. Like, if you want a big house, because you're doing what you do and you love and you fell in love with what you do and you wake up every day and you just absolutely, like, don't want to take any days off and you're willing to work 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, you will be successful at some point. So what I was talking about is, if you want a big house, you can have it. If you want the car, you can have it. But if you want to create, you know, a deeper, like, love or, you know, grind that really goes deep for, like, people that you support or something, you know, if that's the life that you've always wanted, then that's what you can do. So I was just kind of about, like, not materialistic things. I feel like a lot of people put a lot of weight nowadays in, like, materialistic things. Like, you know, like, so someone walks in a room like, oh, okay, so I'm going to go back for a second. You talked about levels and, like, defining success. So somebody, I don't, but somebody, and I think this young generation does, but they define success of if a guy walks in a room, right? Okay, I'm going to give you a perfect example. A guy walks in a room, right? He's got a $2,000 Armani suit on, a $2,000 Gucci watch on, with, like, $250, $300 sunglasses. A lot of people would consider him to be successful. I wouldn't, though, if he's got all this money, but maybe he's, like, cheating on his wife or something. No, seriously, like that's not a success to me, you know. And, like, I've it's not funny, but, like, exactly. So, like, I mean, in the department of making money, that doesn't even mean he has a ton of money, actually, now that I think about it. Because, dude, I know a ton of people that, like, they don't have a ton of money, but they buy BMWs. They buy expensive watches. They buy expensive materialistic things. But it doesn't mean they have money. So, like, it doesn't even mean they're successful. They may be struggling, but hey, who knows? Maybe they got that stuff in their charge card, man.
Yeah, seriously. And I think your level of living goes up as you earn more money, and I've noticed that. If I'm making $25,000 a year, I live to that means. If I'm making $52,000 a year, I live to that means. So I think there's some sort of key in there where when you are doing something that you appreciate and you enjoy, like even with this podcast, when we just first started out, you learn to appreciate what you're doing because nobody is handing you dollars for what you're doing. So there's no reason why you will be doing it other than the fact that you like doing it. And I think that's important. So when you get paid to do that thing that you first started off not getting paid for, you're like, the money, it is what it is. Like, I can make $25 doing this, or I can make $25 million doing this. It doesn't matter because I started it not getting paid. So I think that's another thing that I think about is, you know, would I do this for free? And the answer to the podcast, yes. You know, so that's why I think a lot of things is sometimes tasting different things, like in my scenario where I'm learning what it is that I enjoy doing, tasting different things, like Gary Vaynerchuk says, and getting a feel, just like you're trying different food, get a feel for some things that you may think you may like and try them. And if you don't, then just readjust your course. So that's what I think with the podcast. And I wanted to just circle back real quick and ask you a question. What was like our first initial like action step? Like, what do we do first for the podcast? I know we had a lot of conversations, like phone conversations, but I was trying to think of like the first thing we did, just like literally the first footstep. Can you remember exactly like what that was? Other than the phone conversations of just talking about it and having the idea.
You mean like actually doing something about it?
Yeah, like what was the footstep that we took was like, all right, like was it downloading the apps to record our phone calls, or was it the...
I think... Well,
it was, we created the social media pages. Like, what do we exactly do?
So I'm pretty sure the first action we took before. So as you said, we did talk on the phone, and we had decided, like, hey, you know, we're gonna make a podcast. We're gonna do this. After we decided, the first thing we did, the first initial action was, you downloaded the app so we could make these phone calls and record them. That was the first thing. I remember that.
And then literally the second one was test it, try it out. Okay, yeah, we noticed the audio wasn't the best. We talked about that. So I think it's adjusting your expectations. Like we downloaded it. We both know that the quality of the sound is not exactly where we want it to be, but we didn't want to not do it at the expense of not having the most ideal sound quality. So that's a good example of something where you may sacrifice a little bit of your future vision of where your whatever your thing is. So like if going to the gym, you may not have the best workout routine. You may not belong, like for me, I go to Planet Fitness. I don't belong to the best gym, but you don't need the best stuff to get started doing what you're doing. So I think that was a good example of that.
Yeah, no, I think so too. But yeah, so that all circles back to, and well, actually, it's funny because when we decided, okay, we're gonna do this, and we started taking action. Tom, how long did it take us to actually get the first podcast up and running?
It was probably a month and a half. I was thinking, because I don't even think of that, because when I planted those plans that you were busting my balls about, when you were like, I remember I was walking through Lowe's and we recorded like a sample thing through the cell phone recorder. And so if anybody wants to know, we're using what's it called, Tape-A-Call. So it's just an app. I think I paid like $10 for it. So it's called Tape-A-Call, and I call Diddy, he comes in, and we just go from there. So we did a practice call, and then it still took us, I think, 2 or 3 or maybe even a month after that initial where we tested the app to even get the first one going. And then at that point, we were talking to your neighbor about doing a website, because I thought we needed a website to have it, which we still do, to have it linked up to Apple iTunes.
Yeah.
And to do all that, but we were thinking, why don't we just put it up on YouTube to start? And I know how to do that.
Exactly.
And so that was the next step.
Yeah, and I think you saying that, I think I actually kind of want to touch upon real fast is I'm not saying like, oh, I'm gonna do a podcast, okay, whatever. Well, you need to think about it, take some time, but don't dissect every single angle of it. And I think that's what we would do. And I almost think you need to say, okay, this is what I need, but I don't need this. I don't need that. I think people just think too much of like, I need this, I need that, we need to do this, we need to do that. I feel like you just have to take the core things that you need to get started, and then maybe down the line, other stuff comes along. But just the important things, like, for example, we got the social media pages. Boom, right? We got the YouTube page. Boom. We got the recorder. Boom. We got the 2 most important things in the podcast, me and you. There you go, right?
Well, it's funny. I just jotted down a note. Like, to me, there's only 3 things to a podcast. Content, like the quality of your sound, and then how you distribute the podcast. So, like, you basically, content. You and I mean, we're just going to be talking about basically documenting us and where we go through, and then coming up with random, maybe people that we come on to. Sound quality, we already talked about, like, the future of what we'd like to do, how to make it better. It's just a matter of incrementally taking steps to get better. And then distribution. That's like, okay, we're going to put it up on YouTube. We're going to put it up on our social media pages. So I think if we continue to, we're maybe at like level 1 or whatever you want to call it, like rookie level, and using the wooden hockey sticks at all 3 of those different sections. And then as we get better, we'll upgrade.
I think I'm just, as you would say, you were jotting down notes. I was just thinking, I want to go back for a sec at the beginning of the week. Remember I said to you, so that the first episode, by the way, shout out to everybody that listened to the first episode. Really appreciate it. Anyway.
I just want to go over, like, we were blown away. I think we had an average, like, listen time of, like, 10 minutes, which we kind of used as our thought process of, like, cutting it back to, obviously the first one was long because we talked about a lot of stuff, but we were thinking 25, 30 minutes and to kind of keep the attention span down. But we were thinking, we had an average watch time of 10 minutes. We had 213 total minutes of people, tuning in and then I think we had 23 unique people come and listen to it. So, I mean, that's awesome, you know, and it could have been just for 2 minutes, 1 minute, whatever, but
exactly
any minutes for us is, we just appreciate it very much.
Yeah, so, me and Tom, you know, as you just said, we appreciate it. Thank you, and keep tuning in every week. And so getting back to that for a second, remember what I told you? Remember what I told you and how excited I was, and I was just, like, absolutely ecstatic? I was like, Tom, we just started out. We got 23 unique views. I'm like, man, that's a win. Like, if we get 21 unique views, that's a win. If we get 20, 19, 18, 17, because 17 is more than 16. But if we got 16, that's more than 15. So I feel, right? Remember that? Right? So I feel as though when you start, guys, when you start something, don't have expectations. Don't have expectations. If you have expectations, and me and Tom said, okay, we're going to get 30 views, and we only got 23, we'd be mad. Well, not mad, but we'd be like, kind of
short,
like,
short of a goal, or
exactly,
the number that we set out.
So I feel like, guys, starting out, you should just do it to the best of your ability, do everything you can, and then what happens, happens. And you just keep rolling with it. And as I said, me and Tom's motto right now is we're rolling with this. And if we need to we're going to keep making adjustments on the fly after every podcast. As Tom said, our last podcast was was over an hour. It was an hour and 20 minutes. We talked after. That's too long. Okay? Now we're cutting it down to 25, 30, around that time.
Which
in the podcast.
Has landed. The eagle has landed.
That could be the hint word. I know. That could be the hint word. Yeah.
All right. But yeah. In closing, I think I laid everything on the table for just starting. I think for me, it's about taking my own advice, knowing that there's going to be setbacks, knowing you're going to have days where you don't. You know, you may be less motivated today than you are tomorrow. And tomorrow you might wake up and you might have a little bit of a tougher day than you did today. But give yourself a little bit of slack. But then there's also that time where you need to kind of bust yourself in the butt and say, or even have a friend do it, because sometimes you're easier on yourself than somebody close to you is. And I think you've done that to me. I know other friends have kind of kicked me in the ass a little bit. Sometimes you do have to lean on some people to help you to get started. So don't be afraid to let somebody motivate you, or a book or a video or something, but it's ultimately up to you to take the first footstep moving forward.
Yeah, I think those are definitely good points. Guys, for me, getting started, as I talked about at the beginning, I feel as though one of the biggest things is the fear. Don't be afraid. If you love it, don't be afraid to fail. Because you want to know something, you're going to. It's going to happen. I know it's going to. So don't have fear in that sense, but also don't have the fear of people looking at you differently or any of the negative things that come with it, because stuff's going to happen. You just have to realize that. It is. Me and Tom have realized it. Me and Tom talked about it. It's the hardest thing. Just getting started. I mean, and I'm sure once we get off this podcast, we're going to talk at some point and say, hey, we got to do this better. So now, after one podcast from last week, we've already decided to cut it down. So now we're cutting it down, right? And I'm sure, as I just said, we'll get off this podcast and we'll talk about another thing we got to change. So, as I said at the beginning too, you don't got to minutely pick every single little detail out and make it the best. Get started, get going. Exactly. Let it roll, baby. Let it roll.
I think that brings us into our next most important thing of the week.
Baby. Been waiting for this. Been waiting for this.
Shout out to the grinder of the week. And we all know who the grinder of the week for me is. Diddy, I don't know who yours is, but I know you started last week.
Yeah, so why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I'm going to start with a gentleman.
I like this one. Boys, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I like this one. Boys, ladies and gentlemen, I like this one. But go ahead, Tom.
Just a little backstory. I introduced myself. There's a girl at Panera Bread. She works there, so she's a little bit younger, just a hair younger than you know, I'm 30 now, so I got to watch out for myself. But she was cute. I introduced myself to her. And it was good. We had a good conversation, and that was it. Well, anyways, I leave Panera. I go over to Publix to get a couple things of water. And, of course, they're doing samples. It was a Friday, so they were doing samples and, you know, testing things. And they were testing Honeycrisp apples. And so I stop by. I get an apple. And the guy that's behind the counter working is a guy by the name of Bernie. And so I get to talking to Bernie for about 20, 25 minutes. And the guy, this is his third company that he's going to be retiring for. He's been at Publix for 15 years. He retired from a property management company in Florida for, I think he said he did 20 years there. And then he did another 15 years with a company that I totally forgot what it was. But so he said this was the third company, and he just had this most, like, enthusiastic, like, I can't even tell you. He was 80 years old, so he was a lot older, but he seemed like a kid. And he was telling me, man, you got to go back to, because I was telling him about the girl and this and that. He's like, you got to go back to Panera Bread and ask her out. I mean, tomorrow is Saturday. He's like, you got to go back there and ask her out. What are you thinking?
Hey. That's a true. He knows what he's doing, Tom.
No, and and it's funny that I talk about that because, you know,
that's old school right there. That's old school.
It's not having regret. Like, I kind of regret not asking her out. Like, so I think it was funny that he said that. Was like, go back there and ask her out. Like, don't be afraid to do what you think in your mind you want to do. So it was really funny. A 15, 20-minute conversation with a guy that was 80 years old, you know, just totally made me. It just was a really funny experience. But he's my grinder of the week. That's all I can say. Bernie, 80 years old, Publix worker.
That's great. That's great. I'm sure Bernie, you know, was he a bagger? Was he bagging?
No,
what was he doing there?
He wasn't bagging. He was just he was sampling. So he had his little cut up apple slices, and he was just handing them out. Yeah. He was just that guy. So
yeah, I'm sure he gives out a lot of wisdom to us young bucks. You know,
he sure did. He sure gave me a free lesson that day.
Shout out to Scotty Free. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so my grinder of the week, I actually work with him. And actually I have to say, you know, he's had a huge impact in my work life. His name's Ken Whittier. He's let me tell you something, this guy right here, he's actually an intern coordinator he's the intern coordinator at Boyle. So he wears so many hats there. He's let me tell you something. He's a workhorse, man. He's a workhorse. I try to replicate myself after him. I do. The guy just absolutely works his bag off every day, man. He's in the gym at like 5:45 in the morning, and he's not out of there till 9, 10, constantly working. But and it's funny because he's actually a few years younger than me. I'm not really sure how old he is. Maybe like 25. You know, and I've learned a ton of stuff from him. So one of the things I've gotten out of him is that, you know, it don't matter, like, that I've realized it doesn't matter how young you are. He's taught me so many lessons. So
that's awesome.
He's great, not only a great strength coach, but just a great guy, you know, such a humble guy, does anything for anybody. He's the absolute man. So that's my grinder of the week, Ken Whittier. I was going to do him last week. I had him, but, you know, I figured I'd get the old, you know, Mama Bear on there to start off. Yeah, and then, like, you know, he don't stop. It wasn't like he did anything different this week. But, yeah, he's the grinder of the week today.
I like it.
So,
well, Diddy, great episode, and I think people definitely should find at least one or two things in here. If nothing else, just the simple fact of finding that one thing that gives you, like, that next footstep of getting started, and, you know, just start there. Don't overwhelm yourself. And then from there, you can take the next one and go from there. So I know it's kind of a simple idea, but for me, it's really helped, at least with us in starting the podcast. So,
well, a lot of people overlook and overthink things. And if they'd actually, you know, sit back, and we realized this, and just actually did, and then adjusted as they went, they'd be fine, you know? So, but,
well, all right, let's wrap her up.
All right, guys. Well, you know, it was a pleasure. And that's episode 2. We'll see ya. No, you'll hear us because you don't see us. So my correction. You'll hear us.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday on TV or something. Who knows? Or maybe something.
All right, man.
All right?
Shutting her down.
All right, you take care. Everybody else out there, take care. Bye-bye.
See you, everyone.